hopefully the applicant will continue to work with the county and the commission going forward. Okay, Mr. Carl, last item.
Yes, last item for today. This is item number 12B, and I would like to ask Kiana Ford, who's our lead analyst for this project, to give our staff presentation.
Good afternoon, Chair Brownstein and Commissioners. As Mr. Carl just informed you, item 12B is an application by the City of Santa Cruz to institute oversized vehicle parking restrictions and related programs citywide. Next slide, please. The proposed project would eliminate overnight parking for oversized vehicles from midnight to 5 a.m. along city streets, parking lots, and rights-of-way, and provide a complementary safe parking program in its place. The city indicates that the proposed project is designed to address two main city concerns. First, that many oversized vehicles are used as housing when city streets are not equipped to function in this way, thus leading to public health, safety, and welfare concerns. And second, that oversized vehicles used for housing can sometimes result in coastal resource problems, including in terms of trash and waste, as well as blocking others from parking for coastal access. These city concerns are not new, and the city previously proposed a similar program that came before the Commission in 2016. At that time, the program included the same nighttime oversized vehicle parking restrictions, but it did not include any alternative parking or programs for such displaced vehicles or their users. The Commission raised concerns about these program flaws at the time, and the city ultimately abandoned that project. Next slide, please. In response to those concerns, the city's current proposed project still includes the overnight oversized vehicle parking restrictions, but it now also includes a complementary program that would provide overnight parking areas and services for displaced vehicles and their users. The main component of the safe parking program would provide some 70 alternative oversized vehicle parking spaces in various locations within 3 tiered categories. Tier 1 spaces provide emergency overnight parking for a single night. Tier 2 spaces offer overnight only parking for up to 30 days with trash and hygiene facilities provided. And Tier 3 spaces provide all Tier 2 elements as well as 24/7 parking facilities with access to additional amenities and support services such as showers, electrical charging stations, vehicle battery charging, additional parking for users' other vehicles, and personal case managers that assist participants in, for example, applying to housing programs, obtaining health insurance, and seeking mental health support. In total, the city proposes 3 Tier 1 spaces, 46 Tier 2 spaces, and between 16 and 22 Tier 3 spaces, depending on the size of the oversized vehicles participating at any given time. Under the city's proposal, if there are no alternative parking spaces available for oversized vehicles in any of the tiers, the city will give any vehicle seeking a spot in the program a pass to park overnight on the street until a tiered space becomes available. Participants in the parking program are required to register with the city and sign a code of conduct, and in return, the city provides overnight spaces and associated facilities free of cost. Next slide, please. The program raises Chapter 3 and LCP issues primarily in terms of public access and water quality and habitat. In terms of public access, the proposed parking restriction is limited to the hours between midnight and 5 a.m., which is not a high public access use time and limited to those using oversized vehicles for such access, which itself is a subset of nighttime public access users. As a result, the public access impact of the program on nighttime public access would be fairly negligible. And the city argues that the impact is in fact positive overall, as the nighttime restriction and the alternative safe parking program means that more public parking spots will be available during the prime daytime public access times, because the spaces are being turned over more often, thus allowing others to occupy them. In terms of water quality and habitat concerns, the city has identified instances where oversized vehicle users appear to have contributed to resource degradation through deposition of litter and bodily waste, sometimes in and or near important habitat areas. The city does not allege that all such vehicle users lead to such impacts, but the city does identify a subset. To the extent that the proposed program means that any such subset are instead provided safe parking and services that eliminate trash and waste issues on city streets and nearby habitat areas, then it should only lead to water quality habitat enhancement as compared to the current situation. Next slide, please. In short, there are limited coastal act and LCP issues associated with Chapter 3 concerns. At the same time, those issues must be understood through the environmental justice lens, including as the unsheltered community that sleep in oversized vehicles constitutes an EJ group. Here, staff believes that two things are in play. The first is that while that group is clearly the focus of the city's efforts, the program is actually directed at all oversized vehicles, meaning that all oversized vehicle users will be affected. The second is that the complementary safe parking program helps to offset potential disproportionate impacts to the unsheltered, including providing passes to park on the street if the tiered parking spaces are full, but also providing services and amenities to help such individuals at alternative parking sites. This is a key component that was missing from the previous iteration of the city's project from 2016. Staff does not believe the program to be perfect, and you will undoubtedly hear today from those who believe the program is inadequate in this respect, but we also recognize the efforts the city has taken to develop the complementary program and that it can be understood as a starting point for future improvements, including as resources, funding, and lessons learned are identified. Next slide, please. And with that understanding, staff recommends that the program be approved with a series of special conditions to iron out additional details, including related to outreach. Critically, staff also believes that this program, which is really primarily a social services program, is more appropriately managed by the city and therefore recommends a one-year commission CDP to allow the program to get up and running and for lessons to be learned. But after that time, the city would need to process a new city CDP for the program. In that way, the Commission's scarce staffing resources are freed up and the city can better integrate its overall social services and program management through a city-issued CDP. To conclude, we'd like to point out that the city appears to be taking its obligations seriously in a good faith attempt to holistically tackle complex social and other issues. And in fact, the city's program goes substantially beyond what other coastal communities have done in terms of providing a complimentary safe parking program with services and amenities, all free to the user. Staff recommends that the Commission approve the CDP, and the motion is found on page 6 of the staff report. This concludes staff presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Excellent job. Okay. Are there any ex partes on this item? Commissioner Cummings?
You can give me 1 sec while I pull up the ex
Yeah,
parte.
no problem.
Okay, so I did have 3 ex parte communications on this item. The first ex parte was between myself and Matt Huffaker, City of Santa Cruz, and City of Santa Cruz staff. At that meeting, it was myself, Trina Barton, Lee Butler, Lisa Murphy, Matt Huffaker, and Larry and Wally. On May 3rd, 2023, at 1640 hours, Santa Cruz City staff members Larry and Wally, who's the homeless response manager, Lisa Murphy, deputy city manager, Lee Butler, planning community development director, Commissioner Justin Cummings, and 3rd District staff member Trina Barton met after city manager Matt Huffaker reached out to meet regarding application number A-3-STC-22-0018, oversized vehicle parking restriction Santa Cruz, which will be heard on May 11, 2023. The city manager expressed that they were reaching out because they wanted an opportunity to hear any questions Commissioner Cummings might have regarding to the oversized vehicle parking restriction application and the current status of the city safe parking program. Trina Barton from my staff was present to help take notes. I expressed to the city staff that I thought that the meeting was for me to hear from them, so they provided a brief update on the city safe parking program. At that time, there were 15 vehicles were fully enrolled in the Tier 3 program, including a 20-foot vehicle that takes up substantial space. 20 vehicles is the maximum number of vehicles for Tier 3. There are 9 vehicles in the Tier 2 program, which is overnight only and is in downtown lots, and they have identified 47 spaces in total for Tier 2. Tier 1 was located at the police department, which were emergency sites, but many of them have been moved over to the Tier 3 sites. They also expressed that there is demand for Tier 3 sites, but those are the hardest to locate due to the fact that they offer 24/7 services. They expressed that the downtown lots used for Tier 2 are challenging to use as Tier 3 sites because businesses use them. Tier 3 lots cost about $500,000 per year to maintain, and currently there are 4 full-time staff that are running the program. The city representatives expressed that if they ran out of capacity and people are interested in the program, they would be provided a voucher. The city expressed that what has evolved since the substantial issue was raised was that the city eliminated the setbacks from the intersections, and the representatives expressed that they appreciated working with the coastal staff and the recommendations of an approval for 1 year. I asked if the applicants had any conversations with the appellants, to which they said they had not had any discussion with Reggie Meisler, who is a member of Santa Cruz Cares and who also filed the appeal, except for public records request acts made by Mr. Meisler. City staff did indicate that the city's attorneys had been in contact with attorneys from the ACLU. When I asked the city representatives about their funding situation and how they foresee being able to support the program moving forward, the city manager expressed that they were committed to sustaining and maintaining the program with approval of the permit. He also expressed that this is a big move for the city of Santa Cruz because many other jurisdictions are not offering 24/7 support, and they are committed to maintaining services if the permit is approved. They also expressed that this would help build capacity for the Free Guide, which is the provider of the services for the RV program. The city went on to express that there are no providers locally in this realm, and that the Free Guide and Salvation Armory were the only two applicants. The Free Guide had no prior experience running this kind of program, and this could offer future opportunities for growth. The Free Guide also helped operate the winter shelters and have been helping to meet an unmet need. I was then asked if I had any further questions at that time, to which I said no, that I did not, due to the fact that the city manager had sent an earlier text message expressing he had a hard stop at 16:45. And so that's the end of that ex parte communication. The next ex parte communication I had related to this item was with Michael Polhamus. And during that conversation, myself, Michael Polhamus, and Sean Maxwell were present. And this occurred on April 18th, 2023 at 1825 hours. On that day, I was having a conversation with Sean Maxwell at the Parish Public House when we were approached by Michael Polhamus. Just before Michael left, he asked to discuss an item pending before the Coastal Commission. I encouraged him to set up a time to discuss the item due to ex parte communications, and he replied by requesting that I reject the oversized vehicle ordinance, which will be coming before the Commission. That was the extent of the conversation regarding that item. The last ex parte communication was communication between Andy Schifrin, who is one of my staff, and Renee Kwan, and Andy Schifrin communicated this message to me. This was on April 17th, 2023. Ms. Kwan is a property owner on David Way and opposes the proposed striping of parking spaces on the street, though it will reduce traffic and increase property values. Only a minority of the street's residents support the proposed 9 out of 65 parking space changes, despite the proponent's statement that it has overwhelming support. The justification given is that it will increase public safety and reduce trash and noise, but the real reason from emails is to target RVs and school buses, which will reduce coastal access. It will reduce parking spaces from 21 to 10. Oh, and I'm sorry, from earlier, my mistake. The street residents who were supported of the proposal were 9 residents out of the 65 residents. And it will reduce parking spaces from 21 to 10. She urges Commissioner Cummings to not support the proposal. She is in real estate and property development, so her opposition may be surprising. That is the end of my ex parte communication.
Thank you, Commissioner Cummings. Any other ex partes? Okay, seeing none. All right, I'm just going to announce some time limits. It's almost 5 o'clock, so I just want to be clear in terms of the expectations. So the applicant, which is the City of Santa Cruz, will have 10 minutes to present and then 5 minutes rebuttal. My understanding is that Mr. Butler will be the main speaker, and there are others who may be available for questions. Okay, the main opponent group is the ACLU. They will have 12 minutes. This will be 6 people who will each get 2 minutes apiece. And Val, and Chris, I'm assuming you have that list. Okay. And then another opponent group is Santa Cruz Cares. They will have 5 minutes for their testimony, and they have 1 speaker. for that. Okay, we have, my understanding is 25 members of the public who wish to speak. Is that the,
We
Is
have
that
about
the-
20 if you take out the people available for questions.
Okay.
So speakers are around 20.
so 20. Okay, well, we'll start at 2 minutes, but if the testimony is repetitive, given the amount of time we're giving to the other speakers, I may cut folks down to a minute. Okay, so let's just play it by ear. So I will ask Mr. Butler if you're available. Thank you, sir. You have 10 minutes.
Thank you, Chair Brownsy and Commissioners, and thank you for your consideration of our application today. I'd like to start by also thanking the Commission staff for working with us over the past year to get to the approval recommendation. We, of course, concur with that and hope that you do as well. I'd like to invite a member of our City Council City Council Oversized Vehicles Subcommittee, Shebra Kalantari Johnson, to introduce this item. I believe she's on the Zoom with us.
Hello, can you all hear us?
Yes, please
Great, thank
proceed.
you. Thank you so much to staff and commissioners and Chair Brownsy for holding this hearing. My name is Shebra Kalantari Johnson. I'm a Santa Cruz City Council member. I have a background in public health and a master's in social work, and I've worked extensively with unhoused folks here in Santa Cruz and in San Francisco's Tenderloin. I'm here joined by my colleagues, Councilmember Bruner and Vice Mayor Golder. We understand the complexities and challenges of addressing the needs of unhoused individuals. And our purpose in pursuing the CDP is threefold: increase coastal access for everyone, address the very real, serious environmental and public health impacts of oversized vehicles parked on city streets, and provide safe spaces and connect those who are unhoused to pathways for permanent housing. We've seen positive results from our programming, in particular, our Tier 2 and Tier 3 safe parking program. In just less than a year, we've served 50 people, over 50 people, and of those people, 21% of them have been housed. Now, this is largely because of the deep partnerships we've forged and the collaborative spirit in which we've operationalized our efforts. We've done extensive outreach. My colleagues and I have walked and talked to individuals living in their vehicles. My colleagues have gone out on their own as well. And here's what we heard from people living in their vehicles. They want safe spaces to park overnight. They want access to bathrooms and showers. They want dumping stations, and they want an opportunity to connect to permanent housing and other support systems. So we took their input, and that's what helped us design the safe parking program. We've also consulted with public health professionals and service providers, including Association of Faith Communities. AFC has been providing overnight safe parking for over a decade here in our community, and so they helped shape this framework as well. I should note that we are the only jurisdiction in our community, in our county, that's providing 24/7 safe parking. We are very grateful for the opportunity to work with coastal staff. We believe the ordinance and this program have been strengthened through our work over the last year. And the Coastal Commission can play a significant role as our partner in addressing what we know is a prevalent challenge across coastal communities. Coastal Commission can contribute to a solution-based approach and help Santa Cruz become a model for other coastal communities. So we want to thank you for the work you've done with us already. We'd like to invite your partnership to help us take this to scale and create a statewide network of safe parking programs. And again, thank you to the staff for your work, and thank you for the commissioners for your consideration. I'd like to hand it over to Larry and Wally.
Thank you so much, council member. Okay, so stop the clock. All right. Do you have a continuing statement?
Yes, Larry Mwale is on the Zoom line. He's going to take the next few slides.
Okay, great.
And we can go to the next slide, please. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair Brownsy and Commissioners. Larry Mwale, Homelessness Response Manager for the City of Santa Cruz. And in these next few slides, I'll provide an overview of the city's homeless response efforts over the last year. First and foremost, last year in March, we approved a 3-year homeless response action plan that specified a number of actions in 5 broad action areas. And this includes providing a range of homeless response services, including sheltering, safe parking programs, producing affordable housing, building our internal staff capacity, including hiring outreach staff that work directly in the community, working with people experiencing homelessness, and partnering with the county and other nonprofits, organizations to provide homeless response services in the community. Next slide, please. The city currently operates 2 shelter programs, one at 1220 River Street with a capacity of 30 spaces, and a second at the Armory Overlook for 135. So a collective capacity of 165. Since the inception of these programs last year, we've served a collective 379 people experiencing homeless in these programs, and have successfully helped house 56 of those individuals through these programs and services during that time. Collectively, these programs cost $5 million a year to operate with city funds. In addition to these shelter programs, with the storms that we experienced this winter with the atmospheric rivers, the city also activated a severe weather shelter, and the county and other nonprofits also offer shelter programs within the city of Santa Cruz. Next slide, please. The city has also spent over $4.5 million in the past year to support homelessness response efforts on Coral Street. And this does not include the below market lease of land to the homeless services provider on that street. We've constructed public shower and bathroom facilities, acquired property, and established a long-term vision for expanded services, including the construction of a navigation center and wraparound supportive services, potential space for the homeless person's health project, medical clinic, county behavioral health, and affordable housing units on the site that we recently acquired. And you can see that in the photograph on the far left is the parcel that the city acquired. Next slide, please. Our safe parking programs were described in the staff report and also mentioned by Council Member Kalantari Johnson. Again, it consists of 3 tiers: an emergency overnight of 3 spaces, a tier 2 program, which is extended overnight with capacity for 46 or more, and a more robust tier 3 program that provides case management and housing navigation services that currently is at capacity at 15, given the vehicles enrolled in that program, but could serve up to 20. So collectively 70 spaces across these 3 tiers. All the sites have hygiene facilities and trash and refuse services that are part of the program as well. And as noted, during this time, we've been able to successfully connect 21% of our tier 3 program participants in permanent housing. And these programs collectively cost approximately $567,000 per year. Next slide, please. And this shows a map of the existing and planned safe parking facilities across the city. 13 of the 49 proposed tier 1 and tier safe parking spaces are in the coastal zone, and another 30 spots are within 1/4 mile of the coastal zone. And next slide, please. And I will turn it back over to Lee Butler.
Thank you, Larry. As part of our comprehensive homelessness response efforts, we are very serious about producing housing in Santa Cruz. You can see here that we've got 880 plus affordable deed restricted housing units in the pipeline, as well as 224 plus permanent supportive housing units. And I'm proud to say that within this last month, we issued building permits that allowed us to meet our 5th cycle regional housing needs allocation in every income category. Next slide, please. The areas in red here show areas that we often do see a large number of oversized vehicles. And as you can see on this map, there are quite a few waterways in that immediate proximity. Next slide, please. There are 12 identified species, sensitive species, just in the area around those waterways. And the fact is that we have a situation where streets are not intended for habitation, and they do not have the necessary infrastructure to handle human waste. And when those streets are used for habitation, we do have impacts. So the special status species here are the ones that can be impacted by, next slide, please. Litter and outdoor restrooms that are the result of having lack of infrastructure in those areas. Next slide, please. Coastal accesses are also a concern. This is the primary entrance to, or one of the two primary entrances to Natural Bridges State Park. And you can see here that there are oftentimes very few parking spaces that are available, and oversized vehicles that stay for an extended period of time do adversely affect the ability of the general public to access the coast. And while we are not asserting that every oversized vehicle creates issues, we do have consistent and widespread issues related to sanitation, litter, environmental degradation. Next slide, please. You can see those things in the black water leaking that is on the photo on the right, and some of the entrenchment and the privatization of public space that you can see on the left. Again, as with the prior photos from 2 slides ago, this was taken Tuesday of this week. Next slide, please. We've identified at least 26 coastal jurisdictions with oversized vehicle regulations that are similar to or more stringent than this, but few have the level of services that the city is providing. Next slide, please. A couple of these are here in the county of Santa Cruz, shown in these pictures. Restrictions 10 p.m. to 10 a.m. And those are creating, even if they're not legal, those are being enforced, and they're pushing and creating an undue concentration in our community, which creates an inequitable access to the coast. If you could skip to the last slide, which not the last one, excuse me, of the safe parking. Or would you like me to?
It's okay. You can finish your presentation.
Kiana covered many of the items, and so I'm going to skip over many of those things. But the last one here, if I could just touch on, we have 70 safe parking places, and we have ability to expand those. We have 20 that are nonprofit operated in the city, and religious institutions can have 6 spaces per, businesses 3 per, and residential driveways 1 per, all without a permit. That last one was an addition to our code, thanks to Commissioner Cummings, the parking in residential driveways. So taken together, these rules and these programs provide a range of options that allow people living in their vehicles to not get a ticket if they want to follow those rules. And while not a panacea, we believe that this is going to create better environmental outcomes and be a better option for the oversized vehicle dwellers, where they have access to hygiene stations, refuse, and that this 1-year permit, as suggested by your staff, will allow us to try this program out. So we look forward to your.
Thank you, Mr. Butler. Before you leave the mic, what was the name of the member of the city council who testified, who did the second slot?
That was Shebra Kalantari Johnson.
Okay, Shebra. And what's her last name again?
Kalantari Johnson.
Can I just call her Ms. Johnson?
I think that's fine.
Okay.
And she is there with 2 other council members,
Right.
Vice Mayor Goldberg.
Right. I just wanted to make sure if there are questions from commissioners, I could direct them to the right person. Okay, great. Thank you so much. All right, next we're going to have the ACLU presentation. That's 6 members of the public, 2 minutes each. Thanks, Val.
Okay, next we have Jamila Najib, followed by Abby Samuels and Veronica Crow, and then Bill Freeman.
May I say, this is Bill Freeman. I would cede my time to Ms. Najib.
In these instances, we don't usually cede. Are we going to have a bunch of people ceding?
Our desire is to have, I believe, 3 people cede to Ms. Najib so that she has 6 minutes to present.
Okay, so 1 6-minute, and then you have 3 people additionally, correct?
Ms. Najib, would you take it from here?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, thank you. All right.
Thank you very much.
Yes, of course. Why don't you proceed? We're going to start with the first speaker, You have 6 minutes.
Good afternoon, commissioners. My name is Jamila Najib, and I'm here on behalf of the ACLU of Northern California and disability rights advocates, and Abby Samuels, who will be following this presentation with their own individual statement. Collectively, we urge the commission to reject the staff recommendation and deny the City of Santa Cruz's coastal developmental permit proposal for multiple reasons. We would first like to emphasize that this parking restriction and overall proposal by the City of Santa Cruz is a coastal access issue, and unhoused people and RV residents will be excluded from accessing the coast as a direct effect of this proposal. Nighttime prohibitions inhibit daytime access, and denial of coastal access will then occur at all times from this ban. It is the very mission of the Coastal Commission to ensure that access to the coast is not only available to the general public, but to all people, regardless of their race, culture, income, or disability. More public parking means that spaces are being turned over because houseless folks will be forced to leave. The staff report and the commission correctly acknowledges that people who live in their vehicles and people who have disabilities, which make up the vast majority of the city's houseless population, are vulnerable to getting excluded from the coastal zone. And such, they are an environmental justice community, subject to special protections to ensure they maintain that access to the coast. The staff report and the city's proposal does not show that they have met the burden of meaningfully involving this community in this process, and have not provided outreach that is not just offering entry into the safe parking program. As of current, and to our knowledge, there has been no real meaningful outreach to actual coastal RV residents. The coastal development permit, if adopted, will only aggravate barriers and further limit access to the coast for RV residents and RV residents with disabilities. Populations that park their vehicles near the coastal zone as their only real tangible way to access and enjoy the coast. Unhoused people want and have a right to the same coastal access as everyone else. The city's safe parking program may be compelling upon first glance, but we urge the commission to look at the reality of the current situation and not take the city's safe parking programs at face value as the exclusive solution. The staff report even admits that the mandated safe parking program cannot accommodate demonstrated demand. The reality of the situation is that the city's Tier 3 program, the program offering the most comprehensive services, is as far away inland as possible within the city limits and currently has a 50+ person waiting list. The city seemingly is incentivizing unhoused people to move as far inland and away from the coast as possible. Tier 1 and Tier 2 parking programs, although closer to the coast, are extremely limited and undesirable. They only offer overnight parking that require people to move in the morning. This is extremely burdensome for vehically housed people and people with disabilities, as it means they have to pack up their homes twice a day, waste their hard-earned income and gas to move their vehicles, and find limited street parking where they will just have to move again. Again, the city has no policies or procedures for accommodating people with disabilities in their pursuit of coastal access. In fact, the staff report did not mention any alternative for people with disabilities or taken this vulnerable population into account. This lack of consideration for these populations and the real hardships they face not only contradicts the Commission's environmental justice mandate, but openly discriminates against these individuals because of their disability and income status. For this reason alone, the proposal should be denied. But we would like to offer another reason to deny the proposal. Even with the recommended conditions from the staff, the conditions fail to offer substantial guarantees that the flaws present in the proposal and even the flaws the staff pointed out themselves in their report will be addressed. Considering the city's troubling track record of harassing individuals living in their vehicles, which we have laid out in our written submissions, we have legitimate doubts regarding the city's commitment to genuinely complying with the staff's conditions upon approval. We want to highlight that this is not an illusory mission we're advocating for. Some tangible solutions to provide minimal safeguards to ensure there is no abuse of this discretion by the city is explicitly requiring that the ordinance only be enforced by sworn personnel, that unhoused people be given written warnings prior to any enforcement, that enforcement be prohibited while Tier 3 parking program capacity is unavailable, or even clearer guidelines for the special permit applications. As it stands, there's nothing in place that will ensure the city will not be discriminatory within this 1 year of being allowed to implement this proposal. We also advocate for the City of Santa Cruz to offer Tier 3 parking programs near the coastal zone. They have shown they have funding for comprehensive services such as Tier 3, and they have shown they have designated spaces near the coastal zone. We don't see why there's not a comprehensive Tier 3 space near the coastal zone. The compromise is Tier 3, 24/7 comprehensive spaces by the coast. Lastly, we would like to address the environmental issues brought up by the city and laid out in the staff report. The city paints a picture that RV dwellers are contributing to waste and dumping around the coastal zone. It's not fair to punish this entire group based on this kind of evidence. I can point you to our written submission Exhibit A to show you clean RV dwellers and the surrounding areas being clean. Again, we urge the commission to reconsider the approval of the CDP and that would ban RVs and marginalize people from accessing the coast. I will now transition my time to Abby Samuels, who will give you her firsthand account and share her story and shed light on the impact of the city's action on their life. Thank you.
Hi,
Samuels.
Yes, thank you. Veronica Crow, who's also on the list, had an emergency and she's not able to make it. Just want to tell you, so it's one less person. So I think mine will take 3 minutes if that's okay. My name is Abby Samuels. I'm one of the appellants in this appeal and a member of the ACLU. I live on the west side of Santa Cruz in the coastal zone. Many of them are my neighbors and friends. In the Coastal Commission staff report, they write that the city is taking its, quote, taking its obligations seriously in a good faith attempt to holistically tackle these complex social and coastal resource issues, unquote, adding that the city will fairly enforce the OVO. I know without a doubt that this will not be true because the city has unfairly enforced its parking laws against people in RVs for years. I've watched the city volunteer cops, many of whom are openly pushing for the OVO, go down a street, pass by normal cars, only chalking the tires of RVs they think are inhabited. I've seen records that show that these same volunteers issue steep tickets to only RVs in sight that look inhabited, sometimes 10 tickets in less than an hour, even if the RV was not parked there for more than 72 hours. I've talked to unhoused folks who have received tickets 4 in a week, and then had to leave the city or face a tow. This is how our city enforces its parking rules, and it's how the city will enforce the OVO. They will ticket targeted vehicles until they leave the city. If that doesn't work, they'll restripe the streets as they've been trying to prevent people from parking during the day as well. The city has already done some restriping to prevent unhoused people from parking in the coastal zone. They did so in select areas only where people park their RVs, in places where houseless folks park, and they did so without a permit. I would have appealed that restriping if I had known, but the city did it so quietly no one caught them. My point here is that the city only cares when unhoused people take up parking spaces and try not to block that parking without any notice. Additionally, many of these people are not able to get into the safe parking program or cancel or afford gas to come and go into safe parking place.
Thank you, Abby. Thank you so much for your statement.
Can I have 30 seconds
I'm
of
sorry,
Veronica's time?
you have 2 minutes and your time is elapsed. So thank you so much for your statement. Who is the next speaker?
We have Thomas Zito and Sean Betoulier. Were either of them also ceding to Jamila?
No, we're not planning to speak. If I can cede 30 seconds of my time to Abby.
You know what? We're not ceding. This is not a free-for-all. It's 5 o'clock. After 5, this is a complex issue. So
can I make one statement that'll take 10 seconds?
No.
Okay.
Bless your heart, but no. Let's go to the next speaker.
That'd be Sean Betoulier.
I don't have anything additional. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thomas Zito, you should be able to speak. You can unmute yourself.
I don't think he's planning to speak either.
Okay, then that concludes our speakers for the ACL.
Okay, well then let's go back to Abby since two people decided not to speak. Please give her 1 minute.
It'll take me less than 1 minute. Thank you so much.
That's okay. Why don't you go ahead then?
Okay. Additionally, many of these people are not able to get in the safe parking program or can't afford gas. Not to mention the waiting list is full, and also many things that people already said. I was at the Coastal Commission in 2016 in Scotts Valley when the City Council tried to pass a similar ordinance. I believe they voted 11-1. All but one commissioner voted for the appeal against the ordinance. The majority of the comments in 2016 were that this was obviously aimed at houseless folks, so they voted against the ordinance. The city would like you to believe that safe parking is what has changed, but many are not able to fit into the safe parking program, as other people have explained. The city would also like you to believe that they have housed many of the folks, but within weeks, many of those same folks are back on the streets. They do not track people once they get in the shelter. I have personally spoken to over 15 people in the last month during the rains that were in a shelter but ended up getting kicked out for numerous reasons, and during the atmosphere river flooding. Last I found that the pictures you showed did not show
Abby, we
thank you.
Bless your heart. I really appreciate your go for it kind of attitude, but thank you. All right. I just want to make an announcement, which is we're going to start with members of the public speaking at 2 minutes. However, if the chair determines that there's a repetitive message, we're going to reduce it to 1 minute, simply because there's going to be a robust discussion on this item. So, Vale and Chris, please proceed.
Okay, we're going to begin in person with Carol. Oh, I'm so sorry. Reggie Meisler was the 5-minute Santa Cruz Cares presentation. Should be in the meeting.
I'm sorry. What's your name again? Reggie? Oh, Reggie. Yeah, you're the Cares person, so you get 5 minutes. Yeah, sorry about that.
No problem.
I forgot about my little list.
I do have a PowerPoint presentation. If that's
Okay,
available.
Billy will get it up for you. It just takes a second.
Thanks. That's great. Hi. I'm going to move through these first few slides pretty quick. Thanks for allowing us to speak on this issue. Please, next slide. We just want to quickly show you that we've actually have a lot of people who are opposed to the oversized vehicle ordinance. Here's a petition we did on change.org. Next slide, please. Here are local community groups who have agreed to be publicly against OVO. Next slide, please. Here are people in the most affected area who work or live in that area. And you can see the stars for the different areas they're in. These are all people who just in the last 2 weeks, that's 30 people who are opposed to OVO despite being in the thick of it. Next slide, please. Here is an article that we just released. Don't trust the City of Santa Cruz on the OVO. Next slide, please. This released 2 days ago, and we have currently actually 290 likes from a wide variety of local community groups as well. Next slide, please. So the 3 points that I really want to try to run through are that coastal access is a social justice issue, and it is a social justice issue despite what Mike Rotkin might want you to think, because the environmental justice provisions specifically say that it is. In the environmental justice provisions, it talks about how the Coastal Act is grounded in the principles of public inclusion and equity, and yet historically the Commission's work has been largely shaped by coastal residents, commercial, and industrial landowners, and without the input of marginalized communities who cannot afford to live in the coastal area. And so, in spite of what Councilmember Kalantari Johnson suggested, the groups with the loudest voice in developing the OVO were not the unhoused and not service providers like the AFC. If you go back to those meetings, you'll see the AFC is upset about what they say. only two groups were given significant attention in developing the OVO, and it was wealthy coastal homeowner groups called Santa Cruz Neighbors, and another real estate-backed political action committee called Santa Cruz Together. These two groups have made up the large majority of the emails that you have received in support of this item. We also hope it is obvious to commissioners that the idea presented by Mr. Butler that poor people are inherently demographically restricting coastal access for other people by merely existing. And you can see that even in this formal professional presentation space, there is still hate speech being delivered about the unhoused. Furthermore, it's worth noting that the OVO is not actually a safe parking bill. Despite this being repeated over and over, nothing in the OVO funds or creates safe parking. The Homeless Response Action Plan, a separate ordinance, created all the safe parking that we have. And so if the OVO is totally rejected and repealed, you still have all the safe parking. All the OVO does is restrict parking space. The other thing that is really disturbing about this most recent permit proposal by the city is the sort of quiet request for broad new enforcement tools, including coastal-wide authorization of red curbing and restriping of parking spaces, something the city tried to do without any authorization behind all of your backs, without so that they would not have to negotiate the terms of the OVO, that they would just do restriping based on an old coastal permit. They've also, as recently as earlier this year, ticketed people for unpermitted no overnight parking signs on the far west side. Parking signs that have been up for about 20 years, and they've known for at least the past 4 years that these parking signs were illegal, but they were still ticketing people. So I think, bottom line, the city cannot be trusted on this issue, and they have not done good faith communication with stakeholders, with service providers, with advocates, with the unhoused. And so what I would really like is for you to reject this and send them back to the drawing board for negotiating with us in good faith. Thank you.
Thank you, Reggie. Okay. And back to you, Vale and Chris.
Thank you. We have 11 members of the public signed up to speak on this item. There are a few that I don't see in the list, so I just wanted to give a tip to those joining on Zoom. If you are signed up to speak on this item, please raise your hand by dialing *9. And if you're on a phone, you can unmute when your name is called by dialing *6. We're going to begin with Carol Polhamus, who's here in the room. And then we'll go to Serge Cogno, Deborah Elston, and then Evan Morrison.
Good afternoon, commissioners. I apologize for reading this, but I had to cut it by a minute, so I have to read it now. My name's Carol Polhamus. Thank you for allowing me to speak on behalf of the board and members of Westside Neighbors, a large organization of Lower West Side residents and businesses. We strongly support the Coastal Commission staff recommendations to approve the city's application. Westside Neighbors has communicated with this commission many times previously on this issue, including sharing a petition signed by over 1,000 of our members requesting that the city regulate oversized vehicle parking. I won't repeat what is already in the record, but for context, want to explain that the Lower West Side is a small geographic area of only 2.75 square miles, consisting largely of residential housing and small businesses, and is also home to multiple visitor attractions, including Natural Bridges State Beach, Lighthouse Field State Beach, Seymour Center, Antonelli Pond, Westcliff Drive, and Wilder Ranch. The city has thoroughly documented the issues related to overnight parking of oversized vehicles on city streets. The fact that the Lower West Side is listed on multiple RV travel apps as a free, unregulated place to park for multiple days has made the situation much worse, especially during the summer. The fact that our state beach parking lots are closed and locked at dusk also increases vehicle parking in our surrounding neighborhoods. Our community has been asking the city for reasonable regulation to help mitigate these impacts for over 10 years. The strong support for this ordinance is evident in the email you've received with an overwhelming 23-to-1 ratio in favor of approval. Santa Cruz is serious about affordable housing, as you heard, and is one of only 6% of municipalities in the state that have achieved their RHNA goals. Our city has done much more than surrounding municipalities to stand up services and shelter for those experiencing homelessness. Every commissioner on your website lives in a municipality that already has an oversized vehicle ordinance in place and overnight parking regulations. The only one that doesn't is Dustin Cummings. I know you don't all live in the coastal zone, but there are 26 other coastal cities who've already implemented similar vehicle regulations. Please treat Santa Cruz equitably. Help us protect our coastal environment. Please support your staff's recommendation. Thank you for letting me finish.
Thank you. Next is Serge Cagno, followed by Deborah Elston, and then Evan Morrison.
Good afternoon, commissioners. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. My name is Serge Cagno, and I ask for a denial of the city's CDP application. I live in a Mercedes Sprinter, which has been modified to be my office. I provide consulting services to nonprofits and homeless services providers. I pay taxes, try to be a good neighbor, have my own mental health diagnosis and disability, and will be adversely affected if the CDP application is approved. As a consultant for the County of Santa Cruz's COVID emergency shelters, I occasionally supported programs by working nights. Because the sites did not provide on-site parking, if approved, this CDP would make me not able to work nights at programs in the coastal zone, nor would the many unhoused persons which we employed during the COVID crisis. If the CDP is approved, I would not be able to see a late movie, would not be able to go to bars with friends, would not be able to visit late with friends, would not be able to sleep over at my partner's house. The biggest proposed reason given for the CDP application is sewage dumping, which is already illegal, and nothing in the services offers fundings for repairs, sewage dump services, or fuel stipends to get people to the closest appropriate dump site in the neighboring town of Soquel. In the staff report, the city admits that those affected would be unlikely to be coming back to the coast or using those parking spots during the day. They admit that they're limiting the coastal access to that population during the day. There is no mention of gas stipends to mitigate this limitation of access to the coastal zone. There's no mention in the staff report that the tiers of city programming are time limited, tier 3 being 6 months, and that most people do not get housed through our programs. I ask that you deny this unnecessary permit due to its negative effects on those with and without disabilities living in their vehicles, and due to the alternative of the city simply providing a free sewage dumping station, which would answer the stated primary reason for the need for the CDP. Additionally, as the County of Santa Cruz is also out of compliance, and I would ask that the staff are directed to either enforce their permit or bring it to the coastal zone for modification. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Deborah Elston.
Thank you, commissioners, for allowing me to speak. As a neighborhood advocate, I have been listening to neighbors and businesses on this very topic of oversized vehicles for at least 10 years. This ordinance would help many of those concerns and complaints, and most of all, to the people who need assistance. On the other side, I have shared resources, surfaces, and other parking areas available for oversized vehicles. Many times these vehicles stay in the same places longer than they should, unless they are nudged to move on. These oversized vehicles block as many as 3 spaces for other vehicles in coastal areas and overstay their time. The city has been offering services and spaces to help with these problems, and we have seen many improvements. I also want to say that I belong to a couple different organizations that would more than be happy to and have offered, if necessary, to provide assistance in certain circumstances for registration and possibly even gas. In order to protect our coastal environment and equal parking access, we do need this ordinance in place to protect our community. I support the coastal staff, our city council, and our city's recommendation to pass this ordinance. Thank you for your time.
Next is Evan Morrison, followed by Peggy Lee Kennedy, and then Jaya Diaz.
All right. Hello, everyone. I'm Evan Morrison. I'm Executive Director of the Free Guide. We are the operators of the Tier 3 program in the city of Santa Cruz. And I feel like the Coastal Commission staff did a good job of explaining the difference between Tier 2 and Tier 3, so I'm not going to go over that. And I do think that both proponents and opponents of this have explained pretty well what the impacts of going to Tier 2 every day will be on people who are doing that. Though I do want to reemphasize that, you know, the cost of traveling every day is going to be significant for a lot of these folks, and the wear and tear on their vehicles is going to be significant for a lot of these folks. A couple notes is that as someone who wants to alleviate suffering in our community, I am reluctant to believe that expanding Tier 2 will do that. Yes, it'll get people away from the coastal zone, but I do not believe that it will make a notable difference in many participants' lives. And another thing that occurred to me this morning as I was thinking over this issue is that an unintended effect of this may be that a lot of the folks in our community who are living in small vehicles may now start camping in the coastal zone because those spaces are available. It's impossible to say what number that is, but that is something that will definitely happen to some extent. I think that's all I have to say. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you. Next is Peggy Lee Kennedy.
Hello, commissioners and staff. I'm a member of the Venice Justice Committee, and I just wanted you to know that the origin of the oversized vehicle ordinance comes from Venice. It's a law created to remove vehicle-housed people from areas. That's what it is. That's what it is meant for, what it was created to do, and that's what the purpose is, especially in highly gentrified communities. Vehicle-housed population, because of who they are, makes this law ableist, racist, and because of the increasing age of people living in vehicles, ageist. And so this makes it an environmental justice issue. And what you do today, if you vote in favor of this, it's going to harm other municipalities that are fighting right now to stop this from happening. Like in Venice, what you do affects us. A specific goal stated by the City of Santa Cruz was to use this to encourage people, encourage them, a law that would criminalize them, give them parking tickets, allow law enforcement to come up to them, armed law enforcement, right? So if they're violating the law, that means they're encouraged, which that is a misuse of that word, to go to a parking, safe parking that's inadequate, especially one that has a huge waiting list. So, I mean, I just urge you to say no. There's a lot of people that are going to be affected by this, more than just in Santa Cruz. We struggle a lot right now because our OVO was block by block, but now it's covering almost the whole area. They want it to, the people who want to get rid of the unhoused people in Venice want it to cover the whole area. Thank you very much. Vote no. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Jaya Diaz, followed by Tyler Maldonado and Nicola Moore.
Hi, good afternoon, commissioners, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Jaya, she, her, and I live in Santa Cruz along with my husband, Guillermo. I am here to express our strong support of the staff recommendation to approve the ordinance to prohibit nighttime oversized parking in coastal areas in Santa Cruz. My family strongly supports the recommendation prepared by the Coastal Commission and share the concerns and solutions outlined in the report related to overnight oversized vehicle parking. I believe that this proposal will improve access to the coast for all members of the community now and for generations to come. I've often seen coastal parking spots occupied by immobile oversized vehicles for days and weeks. This forces daytime visitors to park far away, and that can be difficult for some vehicles, including myself, for personal medical reasons, and also impossible for others. The proposal will improve parking access for all visitors who want to enjoy the coast. I have also personally seen the damage from trash and waste in coastal zone areas directly caused by some oversized vehicles that park overnight. My family often finds ourselves picking up after and nearby some of these vehicles when we're visiting the coast. I strongly believe that this ordinance is a necessary change to preserve the delicate environmental ecosystems in the coastal areas. The dedicated alternative parking zones provide a safe place to park for overnight vehicle users. And the proposed plan to limit nighttime parking, I think, will really help allow for greater equity of access to coastal areas for all visitors. I am glad to live in a city that provides alternative sheltering programs above and beyond the norm, and applaud the city's careful work in planning. Many other coastal cities have previously enacted similar oversized vehicle regulations to protect coastal access and the environment. Please approve this ordinance in accordance with the staff recommendation. It is critical for both coastal access and preservation. Thanks.
Thank you. Next is Tyler Maldonado.
Hello, commissioners. I'm Tyler. Nice to meet you. Thanks for being here, by the way. It is late, but the decisions that you have affect people's life and livelihoods for the next year at least. My comment is mostly going to be actually on a purview of yours that is plainly obvious to the consideration, which is the impact on the coast itself. I understand that, and I respect a lot of the difficulties that people who are living in homes have with people who are living outside, especially when it comes to looking at trash everywhere. And sometimes even people's homes can be termed as trash, despite the fact that it is someone else's home. When it is put out there that this oversized vehicle ordinance might solve some of these problems, I have two problems with that. One is in the implementation. The problem with implementing something like this in this way is that you come at it with a hammer first, and then you try to pick up the pieces later. But that's actually exacerbating the problem, because when you're actually taking people out of their vehicle homes in towing capacities or however you're doing it, you're putting them on the street. And people when they're on the street, they start to not care as much about their environment. They don't really, it's very yourself once you've been tossed outside like you're garbage. So I think that the oversized vehicle ordinance will actually have in the main the opposite effect as maybe what the Coastal Commission wants it to have, which is to provide a response to the ecosystem, issues. A better way to do it would be to require the City of Santa Cruz to come up with a more robust implementation plan for this process, because having these things figured out in the beginning instead of just coming at them later will make it so that there are a lot less people lost in transition. Thank you.
Thank you. Nicola Moore, followed by Pat Raphael, and then we're going to circle back and call some names that I can't see on the Zoom list. Nicola Moore?
Hi, I am Nicola, and I co-own a green business that operates in the zone of the proposed parking restrictions, Hardcore Compost. And I'm speaking today to express our opposition to the City of Santa Cruz attempt to ban large vehicles from parking in the coastal zone. We have been working alongside the parked vehicle homes for 5 years, and we do not accept the idea that making poor people into criminals is the way to address poverty. If the city is genuinely concerned about neighborhood impacts of long-term vehicle home parking, it can combine immediate service provision, like trash pickup and sewage tank pumping, with long-term economic policies that promote better wages and lower rents. The city's current approach of using police to address poverty and criminalize disabled people only makes the problem of mass houselessness more dire. It also makes Santa Cruz a more exclusive place and denies longer-term access to the coast for poor and working-class people who cannot afford to have stable homes here. Thank you.
Thank you. Pat Raphael?
Hi, good afternoon, members of the commission. Thank y'all for this long day of work. Basically, what I'm thinking most when I consider this is all happening within a larger historical erosion of the housing stock. So if there is not housing available in the coastal zone for people to affordably access, then people come up with solutions, right? So the oversized vehicles often is a solution to a problem that's been long going on, right? So since this long going on problem has presented this access, I believe voting for this would be a removal of access from people who clearly can't afford to be in the coastal zone in any other situation. So when we consider trash, noise, and public environmental nuisances, these are things that are already illegal, right? So since this is something that's already could be dealt with existing rules, I feel like this is something that is just a pretext to do what the stated goal is. So this was saying that this was aimed at all vehicles, but clearly aimed at the unhoused, right? So I think something that is so on its face discriminatory should be considered as an item that would prevent access to the coast. So with the overarching goal of making access to the coast a major consideration, I feel like this proposal is not going towards the solutions that can help increase access. So if we were to consider access, what we would consider is increasing housing stock, thinking about not letting Wall Street and other investors buy large swaths of housing stock, right? Because these are all the things that are raising the prices to such an extent where normal bartenders and construction workers can't live and access the coast. So they come up with solutions like living in their vehicle. That's where I am right now. I'm on the coast living in my vehicle, and an ordinance like this would effectively prevent my access to the coast. So
thank you, Mr. Raphael. Really appreciate your comments.
Okay, so if your name is Robert Norse, Jasmine Maya, or somebody from the De Anza Mobile Home Park, please raise your hand. You can do so by dialing *9 if you're on a phone. Okay, seeing none, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Vale. Appreciate your management there. Okay, we're going to come back to the City of Santa Cruz. Mr. Butler, you have 5 minutes for rebuttal.
Thank you, Chair Brownsie and Commissioners. And appreciate the comments that we heard from members of the public and from the appellants there. I'd like to start by addressing some of the comments that we heard from both the ACLU and from Serge Cagno, with the concerns that they expressed regarding people with disabilities being able to maintain access to the coast for them. And I'd like to put it out there for the Commission's consideration that the city is open to establish a process whereby people can submit requests for reasonable accommodation, so that if they have a specific situation that prevents them, or a disability that prevents them from having access to the coast as a result of our ordinance, we can assess that on a case-by-case basis and identify how we can provide that access to them. Another item that also was raised by Serge Cagno was the Blackwater dumping station. We also recognize that that is a concern. There is one, the closest one is immediately adjacent or within a quarter mile of the city boundary, but it is on the east side. We've been looking at a more centrally located one. We've identified a location. We have prepared conceptual plans, and we have applied for a watershed protection grant of $85,000, which is 50% of the cost. The city would match that. So it is something that we are actively trying to provide as a resource for those living in their vehicles. There were some comments about involvement of the unhoused community and those residing in their vehicles. Our city council members spoke to some of the outreach that they did, and we also had individuals participate in the 6 public hearings that we had at the city level between the planning commission and city council and zoning administrator and city council again and again. We also had a comment about volunteer police officers, and the volunteer police officers I coordinated with our police chief. They have not been issuing tickets for some time, and they will not do so in the future. There is a condition. There were concerns about the ticketing and so forth, and the coastal staff has included a condition that speaks to a signage plan and an outreach plan that will help us inform those. And I do believe that's an ongoing effort, right? It's not a one-time outreach. It's something that we will need to do on a regular basis in order to make sure that people who are coming into the city are aware of the regulations and where they can go to park safely. And finally, there were some comments about Tier 3. And we recognize that Tier 3 is a much better situation where there's case management services and 24/7 ability to park. That said, it is quite costly. We're spending over $30,000 a space for that, $500,000 a year for the program that we have. And the locations are, we've explored these, the locations are very limited. And we've actually had those conversations with the Coastal Commission staff as well, because those 24/7 spaces would actually be limiting access in the coast. And so within the coastal zone, there is a concern. And we actually worked with the commission staff to allow for some time outside of the regular 7 to 7 or 8 to 8 timelines, so that maybe one day a week we could have that extend later or open earlier, so that service providers could actually access the people who are going to those safe parking places. And so we've got a whole range of people on the line here with the city. We'd welcome any questions that you have. If any of those others on the line have additional comments, I'd open it up to them at this time as well.
Really appreciate that, Mr. Butler.
Thank
Billy,
you.
if you could stop the clock for a second. Ms. Johnson or any of the others who are with you wish to use your last minute?
Thank you, Chair Brownsy. Just to reiterate that we are very committed to making sure the safe parking programs continue. And as Mr. Butler said, the Tier 3 is costly for us to implement, but we are in conversations and partnership with the county to see how this can be expanded in other areas of our county and how we can leverage the resources we have at the county to make Tier 2 a more robust program. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the presentations. Okay, I'm going to bring it back to staff for response.
Very quickly, we reiterate what Mr. Butler did, which is that the city is here in force. And if you have questions about the program, there's a lot of details about the program. They're probably best directed to the city in that respect. I'd note that we do have our team here too, including your environmental justice team. So if you have some questions about that, we're obviously prepared for that as well. And with that, I think Ms. Warren has something she wanted to add.
Just that this application raises a whole host of very complicated societal issues. And I just wanted to remind the commission that your standard of review is the access and recreation policies of Chapter 3 of the Coastal Act and the LCP, and with environmental justice as an overlay, but those policies being the basis for your decision.
So essentially, we're looking at public access, water quality, and environmental justice.
Yes, but as those policies are implemented through the LCP and the Coastal Act.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Does everybody got